Okay, so this is the key to rational expressions number 3, and in this worksheet you are dividing rational expressions. So remember, the first thing you have to do when dividing rational expressions is to change each of these to a multiplication problem. And so that's the first thing you're going to do, and that's the first thing you need to show. Okay, so let's look at number 1. So number 1, I have 25x to the 6 divided by 5x to the 7th divided by 6x to the 8th divided by 5x to the 9th. All right, the first thing you're going to do is change this multiplication problem, and you have to show that. So you're going to say equal 25x to the 6th divided by 5x to the 7th times the reciprocal of this. So it's always, remember, in changing division multiplication, you always multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction following the division symbol. So it'll be 5x to the 9th divided by 6x to the 8th. Now, since all I have are these monomial factors and I have x's in every part of the rational expressions, let's just go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and write this as one rational expression first, and then let's go ahead and reduce. Okay? So I have 25 times 5, and use your calculator if you need to. And by the way, you may say, well, could I just divide out these 5s first? Yeah, you could. I mean, if you want to do that, you definitely could. You see this? You definitely could. And so let's go multiply now. So I have 25 times 1 is 25. Y'all agree? And then x to the 6th times x to the 9th. So remember, when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. So x to the 6th times x to the 9th is x to the 15th. Divided by 1 times x to the 7th times 6 times x to the 8th. So 1 times 6 is 6. Y'all agree? And then x to the 7th times x to the 8th is x to the, what's that, 15? And so notice, I have the same number of factors of x in the numerator as I do in the denominator. So all of these will divide out. And again, make sure you put factors of 1s in their place. And so the answer then is just 25 times 1 is 25, and then 6 times 1 is 6. So there's your answer. So you get 25 divided by 6. So that goes here. Okay, number 2, we have x minus 5 times x plus 7 divided by 5x cubed. And that rational expression is being divided by this one, 3x minus 15 divided by 15x to the 4th. Okay? All right, so again, the first thing you have to do and you have to show is that you're changing this division problem to a multiplication problem. So you're going to say equal x minus 5, x plus 7 divided by 5x cubed times the reciprocal of this rational expression. So 15x to the 4th divided by 3x minus 15. Okay, now once you get to that point, remember the next step is to factor. See, these were monomial factors. So there wasn't any factoring to do. I just reduced what I could. Over here, though, you got a factor. Now, see, this is already factored for you. These are monomial factors. I'm going to leave it alone. These are monomial factors. I'm going to leave it alone. But look at this binomial right here. Notice that I can factor out a 3. So I'm going to get 3 times x minus 5. So let's go ahead and write it out. Just spend the time and write on that next step. So you get x minus 5 times x plus 7 divided by 5x cubed times 15x to the 4th divided by 3 times x minus 5. And now let's go ahead and reduce common factors. So the x minus 5's divide out, and you have to show that. You have to show that they divide out. Put 1s in their place. The next factor is x plus 7. There is no x plus 7 occurring as a factor in the denominator. The next factor is a 15. So 15 we're reducing with this 5. 5 into 5 is 1. 5 into 15 is 3. And these 3's divide out. 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 3 is 1. Okay? Now the next factor you see are 4 factors of x. I have 3 in the denominator. So all of these will divide into itself, and I'm left with 1 in the numerator. And so therefore I get 1 times x plus 7 times 1 times x. So I get x times x plus 7 divided by 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And I would leave the answer as x times x plus 7. Leave it in factored form. Leave it in factored form. Don't distribute. Leave it in factored form. Now, don't leave your answer like this, though, because we do expect you to understand that any expression divided by 1 is that expression. All right, so number 3. Number 3, we have this, and so that, therefore, number 2, the answer is going to be x times x plus 7. Okay, number 3, we have this, and we go ahead and rewrite it. So I have x squared plus 9x plus 18 divided by x minus 9, and that rational expression is being divided by this one, x squared minus 4x minus 21 divided by x minus 9. Again, the first thing you have to do is change this to a multiplication problem. So I'm going to get, see the equal sign? Notice I put equal signs whenever I went through the process. So I get x squared plus 9x plus 18 divided by x minus 9 times the reciprocal of this. You got to show that. So x minus 9 divided by x squared minus 4x minus 21. Then once you change the multiplication, remember the next step is to factor, because you got to divide out your common factors. So in the numerator, it looks like I can factor this as x, what's that, 9 and 2, oh, nope, 6 and 3, right? X plus 6, x plus 3. The denominator is x minus 9. I cannot factor the GCF as 1 here, times same thing here. In the denominator, it looks like I can factor that as, let's see, 7 and 3. And it looks like this is going to be negative, this is going to be positive. And yep, that's correct. Okay, now let's go ahead and divide out common factors. So once you factor, you got to reduce. So my first factor I see is x plus 6. Do I have an x plus 6 in the denominator as a factor? No. Next factor is x plus 3. I have one here, so those divide out. You got to show that. Next one is x minus 9. Those divide out. You have to show that. You're left with factors of 1. And so therefore the answer is going to be x plus 6 times 1 is x plus 6. Divided by 1 times x minus 7 times 1 is x minus 7. So that's number 3. So number 3, the answer is x plus 6 divided by x minus 7. Okay? All right, let's do number 4. Number 4, we have, okay, there's number 4. All right, we have y squared minus 2y minus 15 divided by y squared minus 6y plus 9. And that's being divided by this rational expression, which is y minus 5 divided by y minus 3. So at this point, you should know what to do. What is the next step you're going to do? So the next step is to change this to a multiplication problem. Okay? So when I do that, I'm going to get, and you got to show this, so when I do that, I'm going to get y squared minus 2y minus 15 divided by y squared minus 6y plus 9 times the reciprocal, y minus 3, y minus 5. Okay, once you change the multiplication, remember that goes back to our previous worksheet that dealt with multiplying rational expressions. So you have to factor, because you need to reduce your common factors. So in the numerator here, when I factor this, I'm going to get y minus 5, y plus 3. And then the denominator looks like that's going to be y minus 3 times itself. So the denominator is a perfect square trinomial. The numerator and the denominator here I cannot factor any further. The GCF in both cases is 1. So those are linear factors. And now let's reduce. Have a factor y minus 5 here. I see one right here, so those divide out. You got to show that. Y plus 3, I don't have any down here. I have a y minus 3 here. I have 2 here. It will only reduce with one of them. And so therefore the answer is 1 times y plus 3 times 1 is y plus 3. Divided by y minus 3 times 1 is y minus 3. So there's your answer. So number 4, we get y plus 3 divided by y minus 3. All right, so y plus 3 divided by y minus 3. Okay, let's look at number 5. And I think I may have enough room here. We'll see. Actually, let me do it here. So number 5. So we have z squared plus 10z plus 24 divided by z squared plus 11z plus 28. And that rational expression is being divided by this, z squared plus 6z divided by z squared plus 12z plus 35. All right, so I'm dividing these two rational expressions. So again, the first thing you have to do is change this to a multiplication problem. First thing you have to do, change it to multiplication problem. So when I do that, I'm going to get z squared plus 10z plus 24 divided by z squared plus 11z plus 28 times the reciprocal. And so I'm going to get z squared plus 12z plus 35 divided by z squared plus 6z. Okay, once you get to that point, the next step is to factor your numerators and factor the denominators. So in the numerator, I can factor that as z, looks like 6 and 4, so z plus 6, z plus 4. The denominator looks like I can factor that as z plus 7 times z plus 4. The numerator looks like I can factor that as z plus 7, z plus 5. Okay, and the denominator, now be careful, many students get confused with it. They want to do those two binomials. That's not, first of all, that's not a trinomial to begin with. And notice I can factor out a z. So that's z times z plus 6, right? Okay, so now let's factor. Let's divide out any common factors. My first factor of z is z plus 6. I have one right here, so those divide out. The next factor I c is a z plus 4, and I have one right here, so those divide out. Next factor I c is a z plus 7. I have one here, so those divide out. Next factor I z is a z plus 5. I don't have any in the denominator, so you've done. So you just rewrite this as one rational expression. 1 times 1 times 1 times z plus 5 is z plus 5. 1 times 1 times z times 1 is z. And so that's the answer to number 5. So number 5, we have z plus 5 divided by z. Okay, let's do number 6. So number 6, I'm going to go ahead and do number 6 right here. We have x squared plus 4x minus 5 divided by x squared plus 18x plus 77. That rational expression being divided by this one, and that is x squared plus 13x plus 40 divided by x squared plus 9x minus 22. Okay? All right, so the first thing you have to do is change this multiplication problem. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing you should always do is change your division to a multiplication problem. So when I do that, I'm going to get x squared plus 4x minus 5 divided by x squared plus 18x plus 77 times the reciprocal. So when I take the reciprocal of this, I get x squared plus 9x minus 22 divided by x squared plus 13x plus 40. All right, once you get to that point, the next step is to factor all your numerators and the denominators. So the first numerator, I can factor that as x plus 5 times x minus 1. The denominator, remember that's the 77. I can factor that as x plus 11 times x plus 7. Because notice 11 times 7 is 77. The outer is 7x, the inner is 11x, and I do get 18x. Times over here, in the first numerator over here, I get, that's going to be x plus 11, x minus 2. That should work. Yep, so I get 9x. And then the denominator looks like that's going to be x plus 8, x plus 5. Okay? All right, now let's go ahead and reduce any common factors. The first factor I see is an x plus 5. I see one right here, so those divide out. The next factor I see is x minus 1. I don't see any in the denominator, right? The next factor I see is x plus 11. I see one right here. Those divide out. You got to show that. And then the next one is x minus 2. I don't see any in the denominator, so therefore I could write this now as one rational expression. So the answer is going to be x minus 1 times x minus 2 divided by 1 times x plus 7 times x plus 8 times 1 is x plus 7 times x plus 8. And that's it. Now, don't multiply these out. Leave them in factored form. Always leave your answers in factored form. Leave answers in factored form. And if you multiply it out, there's nothing wrong with that to multiply it out. You just got to make sure it's been reduced, it's simplified, and then you can multiply it out. But be warned, if you use the fall method and you make a mistake, you're not going to get full credit, even though this was correct, because you went further and you made a mathematical error. Okay, so everything you have must be written mathematically correct. So that's why I just leave it in factored form. It looks better in factored form. Okay, so that is the key. Oh, and let me write the answer here. So the answer to number 6 is x minus 1 times x minus 2 divided by x plus 7 times x plus 8. Okay, so that is the key to the worksheet on rational expressions number 3.